This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosts Civil War reenactments, ATV rodeos, mud bogs, diesel truck pulls, and high school rodeo finals. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a special welcome to Secretary Marla Decker. We're delighted to have you back on This Week in Richmond. You've helped inform our viewers on public safety matters, the secretariat in which you served in the past, and we're delighted that you're here today to update our viewers on what has recently happened and looking forward to what you're working on in this fourth year of your term as Secretary of Public Safety. So welcome.
Well, thank you, David, and as always, it's a pleasure to be here and to chat with you a little bit about what is going on in public safety in Virginia. And the report is that we're still doing well. Our team, our public safety team, is doing a great job and leading the nation in innovation and very successful public safety initiatives. So we're really excited about where we are. Of course, as you know, public safety remains a challenge with the day-to-day issues that come up, and unfortunately we've had some circumstances recently, and beginning, I guess, with most distant is the Sandy Hook school incident that was just tragic and that has left the country stunned, that acts of terror could be such traumatic situation involving young children and a school situation. And, you know, Virginia is uniquely, unfortunately, familiar with this kind of thing with the Virginia Tech tragedy. And so immediately after the Sandy Hook incident, the governor made some early decisions as to how Virginia was going to address and react to the situation. And of course, obviously the immediate concern was to reach out to Connecticut and to offer whatever assistance they needed and whatever we could help with. And then the next thing was to decide what, if anything, we needed to do in Virginia. We certainly, post-Virginia Tech, made some changes at the higher education level and on the campuses across Virginia. And we've made some moves with the schools K through 12 prior to Sandy Hook. And the good news was that we were doing a lot of aggressive measures in terms of keeping the schools safe and secure. Our K through 12 community, the education community does a great job. Law enforcement does a great job. We had a great system in place, but you always want to look and see if you can make improvements. And what we didn't want to do is have people rush to judgment on changes in laws that needed to be made, or any kind of changes in the way we treat our children in the schools. And so the governor formed the School and Campus Safety Task Force, which is composed of experts from across the state in the areas of education, public safety, and mental health. Because as you know, mental health is a very important issue when it comes to to these kinds of situations, not only from internal but external, because so many of these shooting situations or mass shootings involve individuals with mental health issues, whether they be diagnosed or undiagnosed. And so we wanted to address the mental health piece as well. So the governor formed the task force. The task force was charged to work through till the end of December of this year, but its initial charge was to come up with anything that could be done or that should be done immediately with the session going on. We wanted to do whatever we could to bring things to the General Assembly that could be voted on immediately. And so the task force came up with many recommendations that were treated very favorably by the General Assembly. And of course we had General Assembly members on the task force as well. It was a bipartisan effort, and we had a good representation from the General Assembly. We also had some students and some parents on the task force, and so the recommendations, the initial recommendations came out ranging from some changes in the laws to some budget changes and some budget items that would be addressing like additional school resource officers, additional funding to make physical security upgrades on older schools and the like. And so there are lots of things that were done already, and there are some other recommendations that will be forthcoming both for the governor administratively, but also I anticipate for the 2014 General Assembly session.
So the task force, as you're saying, it will continue working on through the end of this calendar year, and I would suppose those meetings are open to the public.
Absolutely.
And probably posted on the
Absolutely.
General Assembly website, so if people are saying, if people around the Commonwealth have some interest, they would be able to come and observe and
Absolutely.
have a chance to participate perhaps.
They also have a chance to participate online as well.
Oh, that's that.
On the governor's website as well.
Do we have a website we ought to put up on this? Maybe the governor's website?
The governor's website.
Okay.
They can go to the governor's website. They can go to the my website, which is posted. They can go to the Secretary of Education's website or the Secretary of Health. It's on all of our websites.
Each of those. Excellent.
And there is a way in which citizens who have ideas or specific concerns that they want to bring to our attention to do that. And actually they have done that since the day we announced it, and some of the initiatives are a result of many different recommendations from citizens. So we've had a great citizen input portion.
And since Sandy Hook, the tragedies that have happened in other states have, I'm sure, have caused you and your secretariat to be active and to be seeing what we could do to perhaps to help in those situations.
Well, you know, we always reach out to our sister states and offer help. They do to us and we do to them. That's just part of America and the beauty of America. We all reach out to one another in in times of need. But I will say that, you know, after Sandy Hook we did that, and then obviously after the Boston Marathon incident tragedy, we also reached out. And honestly, we all say hats off to the way Massachusetts and Boston and all of the localities that were involved in the post-marathon investigation and the ultimate conclusion of capturing the one suspect. And the situation was quickly turned around, and people are, I think, resting a lot easier now, knowing that the two suspects were one apprehended and the other one died in the firefight that occurred right after the shortly after the marathon.
You know, the news media around the state has picked up on Virginians who were there running. Here in Central Virginia, the Richmond Times-Dispatch had a real moving piece by Supreme Court Justice Bill Mims, a colleague with whom you had worked when you were in the Attorney General's office, talking about his experience of being there running and then the aftermath, too, of trying to deal with.
Yes, and we actually, it's interesting because we didn't even know he was there. And he texted and said he was fine, and then we realized he was there.
Yes.
And, you know, Justice Mims became a runner, I think, during his, right after he started at the Attorney General's office, he started running and has become quite an accomplished runner. Our Chief Deputy of the Department of Emergency Management, Jack King, was also running that day, and Jack's frustration was that he'd gotten back to the hotel, and of course they put everything in lockdown. Now Jack's background is he was a bomb squad supervisor. He you know, is well versed in emergency management and would have been available to help, but for the fact that he was sequestered in the
Sure.
hotel, which is of course a thing that you do post any kind of disaster like that. You want to shut down the system. So he was not able to go out, but we knew he was there, and so of course we were relieved to hear that he was okay also, which is a good point about texting. If you can't get through for the citizens, if you can't get through on your cell phone and you can't get through on hardline, sometimes texting does work.
You know, I'm interested in learning more about it, but one of the survivors of the Virginia Tech massacre that happened several years ago has created some new software that I was hearing about that will speed up the process of texting. That's coming out, and I don't know, maybe public safety organizations will be using it, and then regular citizens too would be able to have it, and to something has been developed. So our viewers will stay tuned and maybe learn more about that. But that's interesting.
Yeah, there's all kinds of new developments. Obviously, social media is a huge tool for public safety. It really is. We have, in Virginia, we've embraced it. I will tell you, I'm an old school kind of gal, but I've used emails and my smartphone for as long as I can remember, but I was a little bit apprehensive about social media. However, we have now embraced it even at the Office of the Secretary of Public Safety. State Police and VDEM and fire programs and ABC and some of our other, National Guard, some of our other agencies have been using it for a long time and using it very effectively. We started using it at the Office of the Secretary of Public Safety just last year. And it is actually a phenomenal tool to get information, real-time information out there to a large part of the public. It is amazing how many people are keeping up and using social media. So obviously, as we use more and more social media, and I would also urge everybody to be cautious about social media, but used the right way, it can be very effective to get good information, good real-time information about everything from, disasters, what shelters are open, what to do and don't do, where to go, what websites to go to get what information, and of course, again, state police have been using it, and most of our local law enforcement and federal law enforcement have been using it for a while because it is good to get information out to the public and to get information back in.
Yes.
So it's a great resource, and I think, with the marathon, I know post-marathon, the Boston Marathon, there was talk about a new Google tool that tracks runners and enables you to be able to track if your family member's a runner, and so we're looking at some of that technology too.
We were talking just before the show started about the tragedy that took place in Texas, and my comment to you was, had it not been for that disaster and the act of terror, in Boston, we probably would have been seeing much, much more in the media about the explosion in Texas, and one that took the lives of so many public safety officials too.
Yeah, and again, we are always, I think as a nation, we are always looking at what is allegedly the most significant media event of the time, and so unfortunately, when you have back-to-back horrific events like that,
Yes.
It is difficult for the citizenry to really know the full story about whatever happens second. You know?
Right.
And I will tell you that first responders, law enforcement, and fire and EMS, they're always leery, obviously, of any kind of tragedies that occur back to back, that they are somehow related. And of course, that was the initial gut reaction: is this an act of terror, or is it just a horrific explosion that resulted in the loss of a lot of lives? And I think now what we're seeing is that the situation, unfortunately, right on the heels of the Boston Marathon act of terrorism, it appears right now that we've lost significant lives, we've lost significant number of first responders, and as you point out,
Yeah.
it hasn't been given the attention it's due, and that is a tragedy in and of itself, and we certainly want to make sure that everybody recognizes. I know we again reached out to Texas to offer our assistance because we knew as soon as it happened that it would be a prolonged event. It would be, several days worth of search and recovery, and it would be several days worth of working crime scenes and that kind of thing, or potential crime scenes. So we offered our assistance, as we always do. But you're right, it was not covered adequately as it should have been. And unfortunately, that's the nature of the way
Right.
things work.
Well, now, apart from all of these that you and your office have had to respond to, we want to make sure we give you time to talk about some of the other initiatives and maybe what you're doing that are not specifically responses to acts such as these or disasters.
Well, one thing, and thank you, David, and one thing I would like to, before we move on from, I guess, disasters and situations involving first responders and law enforcement, I would like to mention that the third week in April is Victims' Rights Week. It's at the national level and at the state level. The governor has declared, much like the national level, we have a Virginia State Victims' Rights Week. And so, oftentimes victims are forgotten about after the drama on the TV and in the news, and victims, are a tremendous part of our criminal justice system.
Right.
They're the reason we have the criminal justice system, is for the victims and to protect the victims. And so I would urge everyone to remember victims and to do what they can to support crime prevention initiatives, to support recovery efforts for victims, and there are organizations out there that deal specifically with victims in each area, and that they be given support by the community. That said, I would also point out that we are entering about a 2-month-long period of remembrance for line of duty deaths. And that starts in May with Law Enforcement Memorial Week, and that'll be followed by the National Law Enforcement Memorial. And then after that, we have EMS Appreciation Week, and then for the first time ever, Governor McDonnell is going to roll out a Fire EMS Memorial Week. Unfortunately, line of duty deaths are the most difficult thing to deal with, and they are oftentimes, they don't get noticed. And when somebody pays the ultimate sacrifice for their community, we need to not only recognize and remember them, we need to continue to remember them, remember their families, and remember their departments. And so I would urge citizens everywhere, when these various Memorial Weeks come up, to thank law enforcement, fire, EMS, and all first responders for what they do, and to keep them in their thoughts and prayers, because families have to live on after the tragedies, and departments have to live on, and it's very difficult. And you know, Virginia is not immune from these horrific acts.
Right. Yes. Yes. Well, thank you, and we hope our viewers will. They'll be seeing those dates roll out, and that they will be paying attention to those and expressing appreciation.
They will. Now, on a good note,
Yes.
A little more positive note, I would like to point out that there are some things that we're doing in 2013 that are really important initiatives that we're moving forward with, and would like to alert everyone that we're doing them. There's a program that we rolled out in 2012 that we are working through 2013 to get it out there across the state, and that's called Savvy. And it is a basically it's a substance abuse awareness program, and it stands for Substance Abuse Awareness Vital for Virginia Youth. And
yes.
It is a state-of-the-art program that we've put out there to sort of, it has three components. One is to actually educate our youth about the dangers associated with drugs, but particularly emerging drugs. It's also got a component to educate parents and guardians about emerging drugs and emerging trends and dangers, and how you can get prevention resources, how you can get all kinds of things going in your community. It also has a component for providers, so that we can alert providers in communities about some of the emerging drug issues, some of the new prevention tools, some of the new things being done for the schools. And right now we're in the midst of a competition, if you will, for school districts that have great prevention programs to highlight some of the real state-of-the-art best practices, drug prevention programs in the Commonwealth. And we will be announcing some of the divisions, school divisions that are going to be receive recognition for this, and we'll be announcing that probably toward the end of the school year.
Excellent, excellent. Would you believe we only have a couple of more minutes, so there may be some other initiatives that you want just to mention, and we'll direct people to your website for more information.
Sure. You know, again, a lot of what we are doing this year in public safety is trying to work on some of the areas that the governor believes you know, we need to focus on, and that's substance abuse prevention. So we're doing a lot in the area of substance abuse prevention. We're doing a lot of work collaboratively with local, federal, and partners across other secretariats. Obviously, health is an important component of it. Education is an important component of that. One thing we're really trying to work very hard to do is to raise money for the Public Safety Memorial. You know, again, we talked about line of duty deaths. Virginia has more than 700 line of duty deaths that are documented line of duty deaths across a variety of different disciplines, and we are one of only a handful of states in the country that doesn't have a state law enforcement, state public safety memorial. And so we are working very hard to raise the money necessary for a public safety memorial, which will acknowledge and recognize all of those who've died in the line of duty, ranging across corrections, National Guard, game and inland fisheries, law enforcement, fire, EMS, you name it. If they are a part of public safety, they would be recognized on that memorial for line of duty death.
Well, we're going to have to end because our time has run out, but let's encourage people to go to the websites, whether it's to support this memorial or to get more information about other programs. And Secretary Decker, thank you so much for being on This Week in Richmond.
Thank you.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosts Civil War reenactments, ATV rodeos, mud bogs, diesel truck pulls, and high school rodeo finals. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.